Chapter 1. The Man Who Signed Everything. Jiang Ziyuan did not believe in wasted motion. Every second of his day was accounted for. Meetings stacked against meetings, contracts read twice before they were read a third time by lawyers, dinners that were never really dinners but negotiations with better lighting. He was the third generation of the Jiang family to sit in the chairman's chair, and he had learned, long before he learned to tie a proper tie, that a Jiang did not waste anything. Not time, not money, not affection. Lin Xiao had been his personal assistant for 4 years, and in those 4 years he had learned to move at the same clipped, economical pace. He carried 2 phones, one company-issued and one that only Jiang Ziyuan's number could reach. He memorized the chairman's coffee order down to the exact temperature. He learned which silences meant leave the folder and go and which meant stay, I might need something. What he had not planned on learning was the shape of the man underneath all that armor. "You're doing it again," Jiang Ziyuan said one evening, not looking up from the report in his hands. "Doing what, sir?" "Standing there like you're waiting for permission to breathe." He set the report down and finally looked up. His eyes were tired in a way the company's shareholders would never be allowed to see. "Sit down, Lin Xiao. It's past 9. Nobody's watching us anymore." Lin Xiao sat, carefully, on the very edge of the leather chair across the desk, as if the room might revoke the invitation the moment he got too comfortable in it. "You've been with me 4 years, Jiang Ziyuan said, and you still sit like a guest." "I am a guest," Lin Xiao said. "This is your office, your company, your name on the door. It's your name on half the memos that keep this company from collapsing," Jiang Ziyuan said dryly, and that was the thing that undid Lin Xiao every time. Not the money, not the title, not the black car that picked him up before dawn. It was that underneath the cold and disciplined chairman the tabloids loved to photograph, there was a man who noticed, who kept count of the unglamorous work no one else saw, who said thank you in ways that never used the actual words. It had started small. A coffee left on Lin Xiao's desk on mornings, he looked like he hadn't slept. A driver quietly rerouted to drop Lin Xiao home first, though the office was closer to the Jiang mansion. A birthday, Lin Xiao's, not his own, which Jiang Ziyuan had never once let anyone celebrate. Remembered without being told. Marked with nothing showier than a small, expensive pen and a card that said only don't lose this one. Lin Xiao told himself for a long time that this was simply what a good boss did for a good employee. He was careful with the story he told himself, the way he was careful with everything that belonged to Jiang Ziyuan, including, he was beginning to admit in the smallest, most private hours of the night, his own heart. He had grown up poor in a way that made him grateful for structure, for a boss whose expectations were at least honest, even when they were exhausting. He'd worked 2 jobs through university, the kind of scholarship and part-time job stitching together that left no time for softness. When the Jiang Group had hired him straight into the executive assistant pool, and then Jiang Ziyuan himself had pulled his file out of 40 others and said, simply, "This one," Lin Xiao had promised himself he would never give this man a single reason for regret. He had not planned on falling in love with him instead. It was not dramatic the way it happened. There was no single moment he could point to, no lightning-struck epiphany. It accumulated, the way trust does. In the 2 a.m. phone calls when Jiang Ziyuan couldn't sleep and needed someone to argue a point with until it made sense. In the one time Jiang Ziyuan had gotten quietly, uncharacteristically drunk after his grandfather tore into him at a board dinner, and had let Lin Xiao see him with his tie undone and his composure gone, muttering they only ever see the company, never me, in the small, unspoken agreement that grew between them that Lin Xiao would always be the one person in that building who saw Jiang Ziyuan as a person first and an heir second. "You're staring," Jiang Ziyuan said, breaking him out of it. "Sorry, sir. Stop calling me sir when it's just us." He said it lightly, but there was something underneath it, some current Lin Xiao didn't dare name. "Ziyuan is fine. Old habits," Lin Xiao said, and made himself smile, made it easy, made it nothing. He did not know, that night, that a folder was already sitting on old Master Jiang's desk 2 floors up in the family estate. A folder with a young woman's photograph clipped to the corner, and a family name beside hers that mattered almost as much as the Jiang name itself. He did not know that the story of his quiet, careful love was already being written toward its ending by people who had never once asked him what he wanted. He only knew as he gathered the files at the end of the night and Jiang Ziyuan held the office door for him. A small thing, an ordinary thing, the kind of gesture a chairman does not owe an assistant, that for 4 years this had been enough. And that some frightened, hopeful part of him had started to wonder if it might, someday, be allowed to become more. Chapter 2, Small Hours, Small Truths. The Jiang Group's Q3 numbers were good enough that even old Master Jiang, who criticized on principle, had nothing to say. Which meant, in the particular grammar of the Jiang family, that everyone could finally exhale for about a week. Jiang Ziyuan used that week the way he used every rare pocket of calm. He worked less loudly in smaller rooms, and let Lin Xiao closer than the org chart technically allowed. "You should go home," Lin Xiao said. Sometime past 11. Watching Jiang Ziyuan rub at his eyes over a stack of merger paperwork that could easily wait until morning. "You should stop telling me what to do," Jiang Ziyuan said without heat. "Someone has to." That got him a look. Not the sharp, assessing one he wore in board meetings, but something softer, almost startled. Like Lin Xiao had said something he wasn't used to hearing. "You're the only person who does that, you know," Jiang Ziyuan said. "Tells me what to do like it's not a request for permission. Would you rather I asked permission?" "No." He said it too fast, and then looked almost embarrassed by his own honesty. Which was, Lin Xiao thought privately, the most endearing thing he had ever seen a billionaire do. "No, I like." He stopped himself, cleared his throat, gathered the papers into a neat stack instead of finishing the sentence. Lin Xiao didn't push. He had learned, across 4 years, exactly how far Jiang Ziyuan could be pushed before he retreated back behind the glass. So instead he made 2 cups of tea from the little set Jiang Ziyuan kept hidden in the credenza. A set nobody else in the company knew existed. A gift from his late mother. The only soft thing he still owned. And set one down without a word. Jiang Ziyuan looked at the cup for a long moment. "My mother used to make tea like this," he said quietly. "Before she passed. My father remarried within the year. Some arrangement my grandfather thought was good for the shipping contracts. And the tea set got packed away with everything else that reminded anyone of her. I found it in storage when I was 22 and never told anyone I kept it." "You told me," Lin Xiao said. "I did." Jiang Ziyuan looked up at him, and there was something unguarded in his face that Lin Xiao would replay in his memory for the rest of his life. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, looking at his assistant like he was the only steady thing in a very unsteady world. "I don't know why I tell you things I don't tell anyone." "Maybe," Lin Xiao said carefully, testing the ice, "because I've never once used them against you. That's a low bar. It's the bar everyone else in your life failed to clear," Lin Xiao said, and immediately wondered if he'd gone too far. But Jiang Ziyuan only laughed, a real laugh, low and surprised out of him, the kind Lin Xiao had heard maybe 5 times in 4 years and had privately started collecting like rare coins. "You're not wrong," he admitted. "Do you know what it's like? Growing up as the 3rd generation? Everyone before you already decided who you'd be. My grandfather built the company from a single textile factory. My father tripled it. And I don't get to be a person. I get to be a continuation. A line item in the family's succession plan." "You're allowed to want things outside the line item," Lin Xiao said. "Am I?" Jiang Ziyuan asked, and it wasn't rhetorical. It was, Lin Xiao realized with a small ache, an actual question, one he genuinely didn't know the answer to. "I think so," Lin Xiao said. "I think you're allowed to want tea that tastes like your mother's kitchen, and late nights that aren't about quarterly earnings. And..." He stopped himself before the sentence finished. Walking somewhere, he wasn't sure he was brave enough to go. "And," Jiang Ziyuan prompted, quiet, careful, like he already suspected and wanted to hear it anyway. "And someone who stays because they want to," Lin Xiao said finally. "Not because it's their job." The office was very quiet after that. Outside, the city glittered on, indifferent, 40 floors below them. Jiang Ziyuan set down his cup with great care, as if the moment itself were something breakable. "Lin Xiao," he said, and it was the first time in 4 years he'd said the full name like it meant something. "If I asked you to stay tonight, not for work, what would you say?" Lin Zhao's heart did something complicated and enormous in his chest. I'd say yes, he said, before you even finished asking. Zhang Ziyuan reached across the small table between them and covered Lin Zhao's hand with his own. Not a business handshake, not a chairman's dismissive pat on the shoulder, but something slow and certain, the kind of touch a person only offers when they've already decided what it means. Then stay, he said. They did not talk about titles that night or hierarchy, or the family upstairs whose approval Zhang Ziyuan had spent his whole life trying to earn. For a few hours, in a quiet office on the 40th floor, there was only a man and the person who had loved him carefully, patiently, for 4 years, finally allowed to say so. It would be, though neither of them knew it yet, one of the last nights that was entirely their own. Chapter 3. The Ledger of Marriage. Old Master Zhang did not raise his voice. He never needed to. 3 generations of employees, relatives, and rivals had learned that the quieter Master Zhang's voice went, the more dangerous the room became. Sit, he said, and Zhang Ziyuan sat, the way he had been sitting in front of this man since he was 6 years old and was corrected for slouching at the dinner table. The estate study smelled the way it always had. Sandalwood and old paper, ink and expectation. Portraits of Zhang patriarchs going back 4 generations lined the walls. Each of them, Zhang Ziyuan had always privately thought, looking exactly as tired as he currently felt. The Mu Corporation, his grandfather said without preamble, sliding a folder across the desk, has agreed in principle to a joint venture in the southern shipping lanes. 200 million in projected annual revenue for both parties, assuming the partnership is properly secured. Zhang Ziyuan opened the folder. A woman's photograph was clipped to the corner. Composed, elegant, a face he vaguely recognized from charity galas and society pages. Mu Wan, second daughter of the Mu family, currently finishing her MBA abroad. Properly secured. Zhang Ziyuan repeated. Meaning old Mu Baihang and I have discussed a marriage alliance, his grandfather said, as if he were discussing a shipment schedule. You are 32, unmarried. It reflects poorly on the family, and it leaves the succession dangerously undefined. Miss Mu is intelligent, well-educated, and comes from a family whose interests align precisely with ours. This is not a difficult decision, Ziyuan. It's my life, Zhang Ziyuan said, keeping his voice level with the same effort it took to hold a boardroom during a hostile takeover attempt. Your life, his grandfather said, belongs to this family the moment you were born into it. I did not choose your grandmother out of romance, and your father did not choose his second wife out of romance, and this family has thrived for 3 generations because we understand that marriage is architecture, not indulgence. You will meet Miss Mu. You will find her, I expect, quite agreeable. And you will do what every Zhang before you has done, which is put the family's interests above your own preferences. Zhang Ziyuan thought, unbidden, of a small tea set kept hidden in his office credenza, of a hand covering his across a low table, steady and warm and utterly without agenda, of the one person in his entire life who had never once asked him for anything except honesty. And if I refuse? He asked quietly. His grandfather's expression did not change, which was somehow worse than if it had. Then you will watch this family's board vote your father's cousin into the chairmanship within the fiscal year. And you will spend the rest of your life explaining to every Zhang who comes after you why you let a 100-year legacy slip through your fingers over a preference. He closed the folder himself, a small, final gesture. You have always understood duty, Ziyuan. Do not disappoint me now by discovering, at 32, that you don't. There was a version of this conversation where Zhang Ziyuan stood up, walked out, and said the word no the way he had never once been permitted to say it in this house. He imagined it briefly, vividly, the shock on his grandfather's face, the freedom of it. He did not do it. Instead he said, I'll meet her. In the same flat, contained voice he used to close difficult acquisitions, and something in him went very quiet and very cold, the way it always did when the Zhang name asked something of him that the rest of him did not want to give. He did not tell Lin Xiao that night. He told himself it was because there was nothing to tell yet. Only a meeting, only a possibility, nothing decided. He told himself this while lying awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling of a bedroom in a house that had never once felt like his own, turning over the memory of a hand on his hand and wondering, with a dread he refused to name, How many more nights like that one he was going to be allowed to keep? Chapter 4, What We Never Said. Lin Xiao noticed the change before he understood it. It started as small silences, Zhang Ziyuan staying later at the office not to work, but simply to avoid going home. A new tightness around his eyes that no amount of the good tea seemed to loosen. A distraction in meetings that his sharpest board members had started to whisper about. "You've been somewhere else all week," Lin Xiao said one evening, setting down the last of the signed contracts. "Even when you're here." Zhang Ziyuan didn't answer right away. He was standing at the window, looking down at the city with an expression Lin Xiao had only seen once before, the night of his mother's anniversary, when grief had briefly outpaced his composure. "My grandfather introduced me to someone," he said finally. "Mu Wan. A business alliance. A marriage, he means, though he dresses it up as a partnership." The room went very still. Lin Xiao kept his face carefully arranged. 4 years of professional discipline finally earning its keep at the exact moment he needed it most. "When?" he asked, and was proud of how steady his voice came out. 3 weeks ago." Zhang Ziyuan turned from the window. "I should have told you sooner. I didn't know how." "Are you going to do it?" Lin Xiao asked. "Marry her?" "I don't know." It was the most honest thing Zhang Ziyuan had said all week, and it cracked something open between them that neither of them had the tools to close back up. "I know what the family wants. I know what happens to the company if I refuse. My father's cousin has been waiting 15 years for an excuse to challenge the succession, and my grandfather has made it very clear he'll let him. I have spent my entire life being taught that duty comes first, that the Zhang name matters more than any one person's wants, including my own. And then I met you, and for the first time I started wondering if that was ever actually true, or if it was just the only story I was ever allowed to believe." Lin Xiao's hands had gone cold. "That's not an answer." "I don't have one yet." Zhang Ziyuan crossed the room and stopped close enough that Lin Xiao could see the exhaustion under his composure, the real fear he so rarely let show. "I know what I want, Lin Xiao. I have known for a long time now. I want to sit across a small table with you and drink bad tea and not think about a single quarterly earnings call. I want the kind of life my mother never got to have, before this family packed her memory away like inventory. I want you." "Then say it to your grandfather," Lin Xiao said, quiet and fierce, for years of careful restraint finally slipping. "Say it the way you just said it to me." "It isn't that simple." "It's exactly that simple," Lin Xiao said. "You're just afraid of what it costs." Zhang Ziyuan didn't deny it. That, more than anything, was the answer Lin Xiao had been dreading. "I need time," Zhang Ziyuan said finally. "Not to decide between you and her. There is no version of this where I choose her over you, not in my heart. I need time to find a way to protect the company, protect my position, and still hold on to what I actually want, instead of losing everything at once and finding out too late I made the wrong bet." Lin Xiao wanted, badly, to believe that time was a kindness and not simply the shape cowardice takes when it is trying to be gentle. He searched Zhang Ziyuan's face for the certainty he needed and found instead something far more familiar and far more dangerous. A good man, doing his genuine best, inside a system explicitly built to grind good intentions into whatever shape it required. "Okay," Lin Xiao said softly, because he loved him, and because loving someone sometimes means giving them room to be afraid without punishing them for it. "Take your time." He did not know, standing in that office with his heart cracking quietly down the middle, that time was the one thing the Zhang family had never intended to give either of them. Chapter 5, The Family's Verdict. It was Zhang Ziyuan's stepmother, in the end, who brought the folder to Lin Xiao directly. Not out of cruelty exactly, she would have said, but out of what she considered mercy. Better the assistant understand his position now than embarrass the family later. She found him in the executive parking garage of all places, waiting for a car that hadn't arrived yet. "Mr. Lin," she said, and the honorific in her mouth sounded like an accusation. "A word." Lin Xiao straightened automatically, 4 years of instinct kicking in before his brain caught up. "Mrs. Zhang, you've done good work for my stepson," she said, opening with something almost like a compliment, which put Lin Xiao immediately on guard. 4 years of excellent, discreet service. The family has noticed. I'm glad to hear it. That's precisely why I'm here instead of sending someone else. She handed him a folder, thin, deliberately unremarkable. Inside was a job offer. A director-level position at a logistics firm in another city. Salary more than double what he currently made. A signing bonus that would clear every debt his family had ever accumulated. A very generous opportunity. Available immediately. Requiring, of course, immediate relocation. Lin Xiao closed the folder slowly. I already have a job. You have a position, she corrected, not unkindly, which was somehow worse. Let me be direct with you, Mr. Lin, because I think you're intelligent enough to deserve directness. My father-in-law has finalized the engagement between Ziyuan and Miss Mu. It will be announced within the month. Whatever exists between you and my stepson. And I am not asking you to confirm or deny it, because I do not require your confession to already know. It ends. Now, cleanly, before it can do damage to a young man's marriage, a 100-year company, or, frankly, your own career, which I would genuinely hate to see destroyed over something that was never going to be allowed to survive. And if I refuse to leave, then the family will find other ways to ensure the outcome we require, she said, and for the first time her voice lost its careful courtesy, went flat and final in a way that reminded Lin Xiao unmistakably of old Master Jiang. We can make your departure a promotion, Mr. Lin, or we can make it a scandal. I am offering you the version where you keep your dignity, your reputation, and enough money to build a good life somewhere Ziyuan's shadow doesn't reach. I would take it if I were you. Lin Xiao thought of 4 years of 2 a.m. phone calls, of a hidden tea set and a hand covering his on a low table, of a man saying I want you like it was the only true thing he'd ever said out loud. He thought, too, of what it would cost Jiang Ziyuan if this became a public fight. The board vote his grandfather had threatened, the cousin waiting 15 years for exactly this kind of opening, the company that 4 generations of a family had built and that 100 employees, 1,000 employees depended on. I need to think, he said. You have until Friday, Mrs. Jiang said, and left him alone in the garage with a folder that felt, in his hands, unbearably heavy. He did not tell Jiang Ziyuan. He told himself it was to protect him from a fight that would cost him everything he'd built his whole life to protect. He told himself it was love, the quiet, sacrificing kind, the kind that chooses someone else's future over its own wants without ever asking permission to make that choice. He did not examine too closely whether it was also fear that if he asked Jiang Ziyuan to choose, out loud, in front of his family, he might discover an answer neither of them could survive hearing. On Friday, Lin Xiao signed the offer. Chapter 6. The announcement. Jiang Ziyuan found out about the transfer the way he found out about most inconvenient truths in his life, from a memo 3 days after the fact, forwarded by HR as a routine staffing update. Effective immediately, Lin Xiao, executive assistant, office of the chairman, has accepted a director position with Hengda Logistics Group. We thank him for his service and wish him success in his new role. He read it 4 times before the words arranged themselves into something he could believe. He called Lin Xiao's number. It rang twice and went to voicemail. He called again. The same. By the 3rd attempt, a cold, familiar dread had settled into his chest. The specific dread of a man who has spent his whole life learning to recognize his family's fingerprints on a disaster. He found Lin Xiao at his apartment 2 hours later, having driven himself for the first time in years, having left his driver and his security detail and every trapping of the Jiang name behind in the parking garage because for once in his life he needed to arrive somewhere as only himself. You're leaving, he said, when Lin Xiao opened the door. It wasn't a question. I already left, Lin Xiao said quietly. The memo went out this morning. Why? Lin Xiao's face was doing something complicated. Grief held very carefully behind a wall of composure Jiang Ziyuan recognized, because it was the same wall he himself had built his entire life. Because your engagement is being announced next week, Lin Xiao said. Because your grandmother, your stepmother, came to me with an offer and a warning, and because I did the math, Ziyuan, and there was no version of this where I stayed that didn't end with your family destroying either your company or your career or both over me. You should have told me. Would you have stopped them? Lin Xiao asked, and there was no accusation in it, only exhaustion. Could you have? Or would it have just meant we fought your family together and lost together, instead of me leaving quietly so you'd still have something left to fight for? Jiang Ziyuan didn't have an answer, and the absence of one was its own kind of answer, and they both knew it. I love you, Jiang Ziyuan said, low and raw, the words finally arriving 4 years too late and 1 week too late all at once. I should have said it the day I knew it. I should have said it to my grandfather instead of to you in an empty office at midnight. I am so sorry that the first time I say it out loud, cleanly, without hedging, it's already too late to matter. It matters, Lin Xiao said, and his voice broke on the second word. The first crack Jiang Ziyuan had ever seen in 4 years of careful composure. It will always matter. But it doesn't change what happens next week. Does it? Jiang Ziyuan closed his eyes. Behind them was a lifetime of dinners with portraits watching from the walls. A company with 100 years and 1,000 livelihoods riding on his ability to hold it together. A grandfather who had made it very clear exactly what would happen to all of it the moment Jiang Ziyuan chose himself over the family name. No, he admitted, and it was the most honest, most cowardly thing he had ever said. It doesn't change anything. Then go home, Ziyuan, Lin Xiao said gently, no anger in it, only a terrible, tender grief. Go be who they need you to be. I'll be all right. Will you? Lin Xiao smiled, and it was the saddest thing Jiang Ziyuan had ever seen. Ask me again in a year. Jiang Ziyuan left an hour later, having said everything and changed nothing, having finally told the truth exactly 1 week after the truth had stopped being able to save them. The engagement was announced the following Tuesday. The Jiang Group stock rose 2% on the news of a strengthened alliance with the Mu Corporation. Old Master Jiang, for the first time in over a year, told his grandson he was proud of him. Jiang Ziyuan said thank you the way he had been taught to since he was 6 years old, and felt absolutely nothing at all. Chapter 7, White and Gold. The wedding was held at the Jiang Estate's Grand Hall, the same hall where 4 generations of portraits watched over every important family occasion. And it was, by every measurable standard, perfect. White orchids lined the aisle in numbers that had taken a florist's entire staff 3 days to arrange. The string quartet had been flown in from Vienna. Mu Wan wore a gown that had been custom designed for 8 months, cream silk with gold thread at the hem, and she looked, everyone agreed, luminous, composed, gracious, exactly the kind of bride a family like the Jiangs required. She was, in fact, perfectly pleasant. She had never once pretended the marriage was a love match, and in private, over the single dinner they'd shared before the engagement was formalized, she had told Jiang Ziyuan plainly that she understood precisely what kind of arrangement this was, and that she intended to be a good partner within its terms. He had respected her for it. It had not made anything easier. Jiang Ziyuan stood at the front of the hall in a black suit that had been fitted 3 times, and if anyone noticed that the chairman of one of the country's largest conglomerates looked, for the entirety of his own wedding, like a man attending a very well-organized funeral, no one in that room was positioned to say so out loud. Lin Xiao stood near the back on the groom's side, because Jiang Ziyuan had personally requested he be invited. A small, quiet act of stubbornness that had cost him an uncomfortable conversation with his grandfather and that he had insisted on anyway. Lin Xiao had almost declined. In the end he had come because he told himself he needed to see it to believe it, and because some quiet, aching part of him needed to be the one person in that room who understood exactly what this cost the man standing at the altar. He had thought, in the weeks leading up to it, that he had already grieved everything there was to grieve. He had cried in the empty apartment the Jiang family had helped him leave to. He had told himself over and over that this was the kindest ending available to 2 people trapped inside a system neither of them had built and neither of them could dismantle alone. He had believed mostly that he had made peace with it. Standing in the back row of that grand hall, watching Mu Wan walk down an aisle toward the only man Lin Xiao had ever loved, he discovered that peace and numbness are not, in fact, the same thing. His face did not change. Not when the officiant began the ceremony. Not when Jiang Ziyuan's voice, reciting vows written for him by a family that had never once asked what he wanted to say, came out steady and clear and utterly hollow. Not when Mu Wan smiled the composed, practiced smile of a woman who had made her own peace with her own arrangement. Not even when Jiang Ziyuan's eyes found his briefly, across the entire length of that white and gold hall. One long, searching look that asked a question with no good answer left to give, and Lin Xiao held his gaze and gave him nothing back at all. No tears, No smile. No flicker of the 4 years they had spent learning every private corner of each other's hearts. Just an open book with every page gone still, legible if anyone cared to look closely enough, but offering nothing, revealing nothing, a story that had already been read to its ending and closed. "You may kiss," the officiant said, and the room rose in a soft wave of applause, and Jiang Ziyuan kissed his bride exactly once, gently, correctly, the way a man kisses when he is performing a scene he has rehearsed rather than living a moment he has chosen. Lin Xiao clapped along with everyone else. His hands moved. His face held its careful, practiced calm. Somewhere behind his ribs, something that had been alive for 4 years went very quiet, folded itself into some small, permanent room, and could not, allow itself to make another sound. He left before the reception's first toast, slipping out through the garden doors while the string quartet began the next piece and the portraits on the walls looked on, unmoved, as they always had, as they always would, indifferent witnesses to one more Jiang who had done exactly what duty required of him. Outside, the evening air was cool and ordinary. Somewhere behind him, muffled through glass and distance, he could hear the faint sound of a toast being raised in his honor of a marriage he had, in his own quiet way, helped make possible. Lin Xiao did not cry. He simply stood there for a long moment, in the space between the wedding he had just witnessed and whatever came next. His face still perfectly, permanently unreadable. A book that had told its whole story and had nothing left to say. End.